We're here. Nick was about to jump in there, and we were about to fight for who's going to get in first. And welcome you to the Business Breakfast Show with Nick and David, live here from London. Well, just outside Essex for those that are joining us from around the world. But we're broadcasting to all places. Whether you're in the US, waking up ultra early to watch us on the breakfast show, maybe reaching out for your coffee, maybe you're sitting at home at your breakfast table, munching on your cornflakes. Or maybe you've already arrived at your desk and you're prepared to kick off the day, but you're going to watch the Big Breakfast Show with myself and Nick, where today we're talking about speaking and presenting. Good morning, Nick. Sun is shining, glorious day. How is it 10 miles down the road?
It's very good. Good morning to you, my friend. What a show. What a show we have for you this morning, wherever you may be. Across the globe, we've got a very, very important but changing subject to talk about. Very close to my heart, very close to your heart, my friend. All about presenting and speaking. It used to be called public speaking, right? Public speaking. I think that's too narrow now. Public speaking, if you get the chance, but it's a narrow definition. I think we need to open that up. We've got some questions for you, lovely audience. Get involved. Pop any suggestions into the chat. Hello, Sharon. Thank you for joining the show. Get involved in the conversation. We want to hear from you. We want to know your views, your points. How has the world of presenting and speaking changed for you? Lots to discuss, mate. And it's not a clear picture anymore.
No, it's an interesting, isn't it? Because, since the pandemic back in 2020 kicked off, where lots of us have moved to the virtual world, lots of us are going back out, by the way. I was at a networking event yesterday hosting a fantastic breakfast event. In fact, we're going to be doing some live shows from there in the not too distant future. And it was lovely to be back in the room. I've been out a number of times now, but to be hosting a meeting, business owners coming in, having the opportunity to, share a coffee. They had their own coffee, but have a coffee and a great conversation face to face. It was brilliant. But the virtual world still exists, and I believe it's always going to be there going forwards. There's a balance now. You're talking about public speaking, in the room, talking to an audience live where you can physically see them, smell them even, if they've got nice perfume or aftershave on. But the virtual world, of course, you're stuck behind the screen and this camera here. And it is very different. And today we're going to talk about some of those differences, some of those similarities. How can you become a better presenter, whether it's in the digital world or in the real world? So there's lots to talk about. And Nick and I are going to share some of our tips that we've learned. I don't know, Nick, I haven't worked it out, but combined, I reckon we've got well in excess of 50 years presenting and speaking capabilities that we can share with the audience today. Some of the things that you don't do, and some of the things that, if you do, makes your talk more engaging, more interesting, more fun.
I think the memorable talks for me, at this point in the show, mate, we normally talk about the news, what's in the news, but nothing good, right?
I had a look.
You could scour the news all day long. You're not finding a great deal of stuff that's worth talking about. So let's skip that, right? The sorts of talks that you think, I remember that, I went to that, I was there. If you can look back over your career and think that was a great talk, this is what I took away, then that's outstanding. More difficult now than ever before because of all the kind of digital noise. I never had access to so much information and communication. So very, very, very difficult to get through now compared to let's say a number of years ago.
I also think now, because the world has opened up a lot from a digital perspective, that everybody can be a presenter. Everybody can speak from a virtual stage. Everybody has that opportunity if they wish to do so. And for some, they hate speaking live in a room. Get them on a stage, make them stand up, introduce themselves. They will quiver. Their legs will turn to jelly. Their palms will go sweaty. They will feel like they're shining like a beetroot, and they become ultra nervous. But put them in front of a camera like we are today, and they're cool with that. It works really well. And then there's the others that only have ever spoken on stage, and you put them in front of a camera, and they're like, well, I'm not doing that. So it's quite strange. But I think anyone has this opportunity, and they have the ability if they want to work on it. Because I remember when I started off as a speaker, I hated it. I absolutely detested it. But someone had to do it, and I had to push myself out of that comfort zone time and time again. And the more I did it, the easier it become. The easier it become, the more I wanted to do it. So sometimes it's just about taking what you do know and pushing yourself that little bit further.
I remember back in the day, mate, I used to do a lot of technology training, and I used to go into organizations and train them how to use their video conferencing system, and it was back in the day when they had a video conferencing room. The technology was only in one room, and they'd have a handset control, and you'd have picture in picture. You'd have the far side and the near side, right? And the biggest bugbear people had, the thing that they hated most of it all, was seeing themselves in the little picture, the in-room picture. Oh, I don't like it. I don't like seeing myself on camera. Welcome to the new world.
And I said we had 50 years experience between us. I think we need to add another 15 years on or something like that.
No, we're getting old, mate. We're getting old, which is another problem. Who wants to listen to middle-aged white guys these days?
Absolutely. That's why we're mixing it up, and we're going to bring a third middle-aged white guy on later on. We've got a guest joining us on the show, and he will be sharing some of his stories about his successes, but also about speaking and presenting to audiences on a global scale as well. So, Nick, before we sort of dive into all that stuff, I know I said I didn't look through the news, and I did. I had a browse through. There was nothing interesting there. And it was just like, do you know what? Let's not do the papers today. Let's start the day off kind of a bit of a boom. But then I thought, there is a story here. It upset me a little bit. About a week and a half ago, I bought some more Bitcoin. I thought it was at a really good price. Well, I woke up this morning to this. I bought my Bitcoin, by the way, just under £30,000. And now it's at 21,250 or 21,700. What is the world coming to? The markets, and it's not just the crypto markets, but everything seems to be kind of upside down, back to front, and called up here, there, and everywhere. And I know we were talking about this pre-show. I was crying about my small loss, and then tell everybody, Nick, the story about your Bitcoin.
Oh, so I don't do very well in the crypto markets. Right? There was a time that I had some Bitcoin, right? And at its height, I had 0.66 of a Bitcoin, right? 0.66 of a Bitcoin, and I sold it because I panicked for, I think that at one point was about 3.5 grand, 0.66 of a Bitcoin. And it's crashing now, and it's still about 4 times that value. You don't follow my lead, all right?
Yeah, maybe I should come to you for advice before I invested
in
some Bitcoin. But I wanted to share that story because I was just, it's just one of those things, and I'm hoping it will kind of bounce back and stuff like that. But I also thought we need to run a crypto show, a breakfast show all about crypto, because I'm dabbling. I'm far from any expert, and I'll be honest, I don't really get it. I'm just playing and just kind of gambling, I suppose, is probably the better words, because I don't really know what I'm doing. Popping some money in and seeing if I can get a return on my investment. But I think we should maybe do a crypto show. We'll invite some of the crypto experts out there to come on and tell us what we should do, what we shouldn't do. So if that's of interest to you, if you want to know a bit more about crypto, give us a thumbs up. If you're a crypto expert, let us know, because we're setting that show up for some point, probably in June, because we're themed up for the rest of this month. And we'll do a crypto show, and we'll see what we can learn.
Lots to learn. The technology behind it, I think the market will go up and down, up and down. The blockchain technology behind it, I think, very, very interesting for the future of finance, future of business. So it's about, we should learn a bit more about that. Especially you should, mate, because you're at the cutting edge of technology.
I love technology, I really do, and that's why I'm kind of dabbling. But yeah, I've never been comfortable with investments of that type. There is a risk reward, and I like an element of risk. But if you don't know what you're really doing, and I'm just throwing money into a pot, and on this occasion, my investment has come down quite considerably. I'm hoping it will go back up, but it is what it is. I'm not going to cry over it anymore. So we're going to move swiftly on from crypto. But if you are interested in crypto, give us a shout. Tell us how great you are at it. We'll get you on the show, and we'll make a crypto digital kind of show for the breakfast show one morning in June. So Nick, let's go back to what we're talking about. Speaking and presenting.
Question for you and for our audience. Okay, here's a bit of a poll. Okay, rate these 3 things in order of importance, either for yourself, or let's say you've got a new starter, or you're looking for someone to join the organization. Rate these 3 things in order of importance. The ability to write a compelling email, the ability to conduct a confident phone call, or the skills to deliver a powerful presentation, online or offline.
Yep.
So you're looking for someone, you're sitting down in an interview, and you want them to rate these 3 things: compelling email, confident phone call, or powerful presentation. What order should they go in these days? What do you think, mate?
Oh, well, I've got my opinion here. And it's not going to be the same for everybody, because I suppose it depends on how they feel comfortable and how they want to engage and what reason they're engaging for as well. But here's my order, and I'll give some reasoning behind it. For me, number 1 is a powerful presentation. And the reason for that is I've always said the best way to market who you are and what you do is to stand in front of an audience and deliver a compelling, and I call it a presentation. I call it a conversation. It's just a little bit more one way. It's more me, obviously, doing the majority of the talking, hopefully getting feedback from questions. So I call it a conversation when I'm standing up and engaging with people. But that would be number 1, because I think it's the most powerful way to captivate an audience. They're listening, they're watching, and in most cases, hopefully, they're doing nothing else. And you have their attention for the period that you've been allotted, 5 minutes, an hour, etc. Following that, I would have said in the past a phone call. But no one answers phones anymore. So you're just leaving a voicemail. That's what you're doing. Hi, it's David here from Simbok. How are you doing? Just giving you a call to catch up, etc. So confident phone call, no problems. But I don't think it's second anymore. I think second is a compelling email. Because I think if you can write good content, and I'm not talking about email marketing necessarily here, but if you can write good content that's going to address the situation, the question in hand, provide a solution, and that person is going to read it and respond, I think that can work really well. So I would go for number 2 would be email. Number 3 would be phone call. That would be my order, but different for others.
Keith agrees with you, mate. First of all, number 3, a powerful presentation, followed by 1, a compelling email, and then 2, a confident phone call. I
agree.
Thank you, Keith, for your views as well. I think I wouldn't be surprised if we get some very different answers. A compelling email, compared to the amount of emails that you'll send, compared to the amount of presentation opportunities that you have, a compelling email is likely to be kind of more prevalent, right? It's like going down the driving range. Okay, you go down the driving range, you get a bucket of balls, and you whack those balls as though every shot in golf is a drive. Rarely do you practice your putting. So you're only driving once, maybe twice on a really long hole, but you're putting probably twice every hole, unless you're really good. And I think presentation, those skills are going to be they're going to have to evolve for this new world we're in. But I think they're going to become less important. My concern is they're going to become less important.
I love your analogy about the golf and hitting balls, but my analogy of kind of email marketing and to a degree phone calls is a little bit like this. I think it's like being at a nightclub when it's pitch black dark, okay?
And clearly I've not been to a nightclub for a while.
I know, none of us have. And you're winking at a gorgeous girl across the dance floor. Or, of course, if you're around the other way, you're winking at... They can't see you. They can't respond. And that's what email marketing's like. Done badly, you can just keep winking at everybody, but no one's going to notice because of things like filters and junk mail and stuff like that. So if you're going to write, again, there's some great email marketers out there and people I respect on how they create their content. and they will say email marketing is the best thing in the world. But for me, it can be a hit and miss. It's all about the people you engage with, it's about the list. And the chances are the people you're marketing to, you've probably engaged with at some point in the past. They've probably seen you on stage, received a phone call, been in a Zoom meeting room or a Teams room with you, met you at a network meeting face or whatever it is. And then they're on your email list and then you're communicating with them. So the list is kind of warm. So, I suppose really it depends if you're selling, you're educating on informing. What is it that you want to do? Knowing your audience, who you're communicating with. And when you turn up to a nightclub, you don't know who you're winking at.
Two things that strike me. Okay, we need to talk about knowing your audience, but both of our analogies are really old-fashioned, aren't they? Playing golf, okay, still a massively popular sport, but not so much a corporate kind of draw now. Winking at girls in a nightclub.
Look, people get it. They know what I'm talking about. Tony come back, by the way. He's a 3-2-1. That's old Dusty Binnon, isn't it? 3-2-1. So he's a 3-2-1. But I'm seeing a lot more demand for the B2C market, the Zoom chats, rather than phone calls. Interesting there, Nick.
So that thank you very much, Tony, for that. That's a great point. Okay, so that changes the dynamic. Okay, so a Zoom call, a Zoom chat, this essentially crosses quite a few boundaries. Okay, you need skills across all three realistically to get to the point of a Zoom call, deliver it really well in an engaging way. So maybe we're not going to lose the skills around presenting and speaking. We just need to hone them for a more regular Zoom style audience, one-to-one or potentially one-to-many. But knowing your audience, which you mentioned, absolutely essential, right? And more difficult, I think, in a digital. So if you get invited to speak at a digital event, very difficult to get to know your audience. I was at an event on Tuesday in room, right, presenting a live zombie slaying communication talk at an event. And before I was on stage, with coffee and networking, I could sit with the audience and ask them what they were looking for. I'd get to know them, get to know their issues. So when I'm on stage delivering my stuff, I can address that conversation directly.
Yeah, absolutely. Should we give out some tips, Nick? Between us, we have probably got hundreds of tips that we could share. We're not going to have time to go through everything and probably explore many of these in any detail, but we could probably pick on one or two and explore in a bit more detail. I used to do speaking, presenting, coaching. Haven't done much of it. Focus on other things, still get invited to, run some masterclasses. And funny enough, Nick, you and I are tomorrow. We're delivering some sessions tomorrow live in the room up in Cambridge, where we'll be talking about pitching, presenting to a number of young budding entrepreneurs who are taking their idea to the next level. And we'll be sharing some of the tips that we're going to be talking about this morning. But I used to talk about my top 10 tips. I'm a little bit younger there, don't I? But that's not too long ago.
Is that your son? Is that your son in that picture?
No, that's definitely me. Just got a little bit grayer. That's why he's a black and white photo. But I have 10 tips, and I just want to kick off with one of my 10 tips. And it's what I always start off with when I'm talking about presenting, pitching, keynote speaking, public speaking. People will frame it different. There is different words, and they do have different outcomes and different meanings. It depends on who you're talking to, knowing your audience. I want to kick off with what I call the 3 Ps. And I'm going to ask, if anyone wants to guess, we're going to go through this quite quickly, but does anyone want to suggest what they might think the 3 Ps are? What are my 3 Ps? And these are my 3 Ps. And there's lots of Ps when we're talking about pitching, presenting, public speaking. There's 3 Ps straight away, but they're not any of those. My 3 Ps are the kind of the foundations to building any talk. And it's the planning, it's the preparation, and it's the practice. Because for me, they're so important. If you don't get those right at the beginning, then there's a really good chance that your presentation, your virtual talk, your keynotes, your in live room, standing from stage, pitch, maybe to the dragons or, similar investors or stakeholders, a good chance it's going to go upside down and back to front and totally wrong. You're going to get flustered, lost, miss out the important part. So planning, preparation, and practice are super key. Know, almost like you're rehearsing for a play or you're an actor or an actress. Know what you're going to be communicating to your listener and viewer. It's very different to our unscripted TV breakfast show that we do here. We come on, we know what we want to talk about, we've got a theme, and off we go. And it's kind of very unscripted. We pick on a few bullet points. That's my bullet points for this morning. It's not even 6 or 7. And that's a flow. But when you're delivering something live to an audience, it's got to be much more prepared. That would be my biggest tip to anybody. And of course, we could drill down: what should you do? How should you do it? What's the best way to prepare? What's the best way to plan? What's the best way to practice and rehearse? Do you do it in front of people? Do you film yourself on a smartphone and then watch yourself back? There's lots of things that I would be suggesting to people that they can do and try. There's one size doesn't fit all. There's no silver bullet. You've got to find what works for you. And we're all different, and how we learn and how we educate ourselves is very, very different. But planning, preparation, and practice, foundations before you do anything else.
So that's wise words. Okay? And I'm slightly concerned because how many people do you think who are jumping on a Zoom call at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock regularly have planned or realistically practiced what they're going to talk about? And it's lovely to have a conversation, relatively unscripted conversation, but they don't tend to happen a great deal across Zoom. They're kind of more face to face. When it's your turn to speak, you can pick up on body language. I'm very fearful that there's not a lot of the plan, preparation, practice going on in our digital let's jump on a call world.
I agree, but also that planning preparation could be, talking about Zoom, it could be going off and doing your research. Who is going to be there today? Who are they? Who do they work for? Who do they represent? Are they going to be a potentially good key connection for you? What is it that they want to take away from that meeting? So no different, Nick, when you go and speak on stage, or anybody of our listeners here, if you are a speaker where you're educating, forming, maybe you're kind of, doing an after dinner speech, if that's kind of your thing, you're fun and you're there to kind of inject some personality into the room and stuff like that. You need to know who that audience is. You need to know who you're addressing. There's a very different audience when I go along and work with young entrepreneurs from a university where they're kind of, much more chilled out, much more relaxed. The dress code is very different. It will be, comfortable dress, professional, but comfortable dress, jeans, maybe a polo shirt, a little bit more kind of casual. But if I was going to address a room of financial bankers and accountants and solicitors, they're going to be much more, don't take this the wrong way if you're an accountant and solicitor, you're going to be more prim and proper. You're going to be suited and booted, ties done up, cufflinks on. So I would want to be the same. And actually, one of my other tips is be the best dressed person in the room. And it doesn't matter for what audiences. So if it's jeans and t-shirt and casual, then be the best person in the room, because you're the one that's at the front of the stage. You're the one addressing that audience. If you're in there with people suited and booted, then look the part. Make sure you're the one that's suited and booted. But that's my style. And I'm not suggesting that's what everyone else has to do, because they don't. You find what you like, you find your authenticity and what you're comfortable with. But there is another tip: dress to be the best person in the room.
I don't disagree with that, mate. One of the things it does, it gives you confidence, doesn't it? You don't have to worry about, have I come wearing the right kind of gear? Am I underdressed? Because you've dressed to be kind of at that high end level. And I think you touched on authenticity, right? That this is your style. And I think a lot of people, when they're presenting, they over worry about what the audience thinks they should be. Put on airs and graces, and they don't deliver that kind of authentic version of themselves, which I think is a shame. Me, I'm a human-centric communication guy, so I want people to be amazing versions of them. Just turn up as the best version of you can be, right? Speak from the heart, give it your best, okay? Don't worry too much about the other stuff, right? By all means, plan, prepare, practice, know where you're going, know what you're doing. But I think an authentic speaker, for me, resonates more than someone who's, let's say, over polished. And I think
I agree.
there is a risk of being over polished.
Yeah, but I think the over polished are the professional speakers that are delivering the same content day in, day out. So I've seen some fantastic speakers, but they are literally, every step they take, every movement they do, every word that they use will be exact replica for the next show or the one the day before. And that's because that's what they do. They speak for a living and they deliver that content, motivational, whatever it's going to be. And that's perfect. But I suppose with most people probably listening to this show, and most people, you and I, Nick, I classify myself as a pretty good speaker. And, I can certainly earn money from speaking and presenting, but it's not what I do on a day in, day out basis. I love it and enjoy it. One of the reasons we have Chatbox, we want to share, content with our audience. But I don't necessarily make things ultra polished because I'm not repeating it time and time again, unlike some of the top level professional speakers that are earning, get this, between 5 and 15 grand a day. And they're people you don't even know, probably even heard of. I once saw Steve Wozniak speak from stage. For those that don't know who Steve Wozniak is, the co-founder of Apple Inc. And I had the privilege of meeting him, grin and grip, quick. I didn't get the kiss and the cuddle. My wife did. I was jealous as anything because he's a great kind of. I look up to Steve Wozniak. He was one of my guests to bring to a table, to a party, to a dinner party, and he was brilliant. And he come to Europe to speak in the UK for the first time in 10 years. How much do you think he charged, Nick? Have a guess. A wild stab in the dark. What his fee was?
I think I do know, mate. I think I do know.
I think I've told you
because I was somewhat outraged. I'd love to think he did it for nothing because he's a nice guy.
Well, yes, I'd love to think that, but his price tag was £100,000. Not a bad intake. Look, he's up there. He's in a very different league to you and I, probably most people listening to the show. But the point is, you can make a healthy living from being a good, qualified speaker.
I tell you what, he's not as good as you and I on stage, guaranteed. However, he's got an amazing story. He knows stuff. Right? And one of my biggest pleas to any audience is tell more stories, right? £100,000 to see Steve Wozniak on stage based on who he is and the stories he can tell you and what we can learn from them, right? But we've all got stories, okay? It doesn't matter how good you are on stage, if you can tell a good story, right? True story from you, great illustration of the points you're making, then that's, for me, that could be a magical talk. It's the stories that we remember. It's the stories that we can we go away and we retell, massively resonant as far as us humans concerned. We love a story, telling it, listening to it, retelling it.
And the thing with stories, people say to me, David, how do you speak with not having notes? And there's lots of tips and techniques and things that you can do to to get rid of the use of notes. But one of those ways is telling stories, because the story comes from here. Typically, you've lived and breathed that story, or you're very close to it, so you can tell it. And we can all tell stories. We can sit down and make up, absolute rubbish story if we wanted to, just by inventing it. But we can then tell that story. And that's the great thing about storytelling. When you tell a story, it comes from possibly your heart, certainly from the head. And then you don't need notes to tell that. So that is such a powerful way of engaging your audience and for you not to have notes. But the other thing about storytelling is that your audience live and breathe it with you. They can visualize it. Certainly if you start to add, in some kind of keywords and descriptions and stuff like that, they can start to see and feel, where you were and what that story was about. So storytelling for me is so powerful and we need to do more of it. But my only thing that I do say to people, make sure the story is relevant to the talk or presentation that you're giving. I've seen people just tell a story and it's like, what does that have to do with what you're talking about? You've got to make sure whatever it is that you're delivering and talking about all connects and links together. The golden thread connects everything together. So tell lots of stories, but make sure they're relevant to what you're talking about.
Yeah, got to have a point. You've got to know why you're telling that story, and ideally, you've practiced it. Right? I wouldn't advise anyone makes up a load of old rubbish.
No. I'm saying we can. We can we
Yeah.
can bring things up and talk about it without having to, always being there, lived it, and do it. But authenticity is key again. There, Nick. It's something that you've done, something you've been part of. Maybe if you have heard it on the grapevine, it's a story that you're telling, then you tell it from that perspective as well.
Yeah, and I'm sure our lovely guest who's coming on in a moment will have plenty of stories to tell, great tips to share. Really excited about our guest coming up real soon. And ladies and gents, hang on to the end of the show because we're going to play a clip or two, certainly a clip of mine of when presenting goes wrong. I say wrong, it was amazing. But when things happen, right, that you did not expect. So much for planning, preparing, and practicing, mate. This talk that we're going to show a clip of, I practiced to the nth degree, and I planned it. I should have seen this coming, but I didn't. So hang on towards the end of the show.
We'll show that at the end of the show. Meanwhile, we've got a small snippet to show, actually, talking about planning, preparation, and practice, and visualizing the things that could go wrong, and being prepared for the unexpected. Well, I've got a small clip here, and I often show this clip because it really does demonstrate what happens if you fail to plan, prepare, and practice. We all know that if you do fail to plan and prepare, then things do go wrong. So some of you probably are big box office movie fans. You watch the latest movies, whether it's through, your streaming platforms, whether you go to the movies and stuff like that. Well, this particular individual was invited along. This was back in kind of 2013, I think the exact date was. And he was invited to come along and talk about the launch of the Samsung Curve TV. It was a big thing, the new Curve flat screens. And he was invited along. And his name's Michael Bay. And he's the biggest, or one of the biggest, producers and directors of Hollywood films. Now, you think someone like Michael Bay, top of the game, would be awesome at talking about the Samsung Curve TV. Should we see what happened on the day Michael Bay stood up in front of an audience? Let's have a look.
Ladies and gentlemen, director and producer Michael Bay. Good afternoon.
Thanks, Joe.
Good afternoon, Michael.
How is everyone today? My job as a director is I get to dream for a living.
Michael, you're known for such unbelievable action. What inspires you? How do you come up with these unbelievable ideas?
I create visual worlds that are so beyond everyone's normal life experiences. And Hollywood is a place that creates a viewer escape. And what I try to do is, as a director, I try to... the type is all off, sorry, but I'll just wing this.
Tell us what you think.
Yeah, we'll wing it right now. I try to take people on an emotional ride, and
The Curve? How do you think it's going to impact how viewers experience your movies?
excuse me, I'm sorry.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, let's thank Michael Bay for joining us.
Okay. So for those that you fear public speaking, do you fear it even more after watching that? How does that make you feel, Nick, watching that? I've seen it, honestly, I've seen that hundreds of times. I've used that clip hundreds of times to demonstrate if you don't plan, prepare, and practice, this is what could happen. But
chances are, right, what's happened is he's got his script, he knows where he's going with it. He looked nervous from the start as though it's short notice, but it looked like he was relying on an auto cue that stopped working. Okay, right? And very difficult to plan for a technology failure, but they do fail, right? Hence being lovely, authentic version of you. What's this, James? I corpsed, which is speaker talk for exactly what we just saw happen on stage there when doing a best man speech. Oh, I didn't plan or prepare anywhere near enough. I And you're brave enough, James, to watch the video several times. Oh my goodness. And no doubt it does get worse every time.
I think you've got to watch things back and learn from it. People hate seeing themselves, as you said earlier, Nick, but sometimes you've got to look and see what's happening and kind of gain from it. But I think my big takeaway from Michael Bay is you're right. The auto cue here all went offline. It went off, or someone controlling it mucked it up, got the speed all wrong. So he said, "I'll wing this." That was his famous words. "I'll wing this. Don't worry, I'll wing this." And he couldn't, because I think what happened, he had no idea really what he was going along for. He was going to Samson. He was briefed. "Don't worry, we've written your script, sir. All you got to do is stand up and read from it." He had no idea what he was talking about, where the conversation was going to go. I mean, the compere there, the host did his best to keep things going and asking the most simple question. So, Michael, what do you do? And he still kind of got it a bit wrong there. He was flustered, but it comes down to those 3 Ps. Get them 3 Ps nailed on the head, and that will never happen to you. And it's never happened. Well, we can ask the question to our guest coming up. I wonder if he's got any stories that he wants to share with us about things that do go wrong, because I think we've all had scenarios that have gone wrong. But what we're going to do, we're going to be straight back after this, and we'll get our guest onto the show and find out some of his top tips. There we go. One of our little intros, one of our idents to set the scene for our next guest that's coming into the studio right now. Please give a very warm welcome, a virtual warm welcome, to David Turner from Tinderbox. Good morning, David, and welcome to Chatbox this morning.
Good morning, everyone. You okay?
Very well. Yourself?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. Very good. Yeah. I've been
Really excited to talk to you, David, on the back of conversations that my David and I have been talking all about presenting and speaking, kind of a few tips along the way, how important it is now. We're having this poll about where would you put the order of compelling emails, confident phone calls, and powerful presentations? Are they still important? And we had the lovely Graham Laws from Tinderbox on the show a couple of weeks ago. And as soon as we mentioned we had a show coming up about presenting and speaking, he said, you should get on the show. Our boss, David Turner. Now, he knows a thing or two. So, David, please let the audience know who you are, but a little bit of background. And we're led to believe you've spoken a bit on stage. Is that right?
Yeah, I have. I mean, my background is largely sales and marketing. I work for Procter & Gamble. That's where I got my basic training. I've gone on and run a number of businesses. I've done a lot of presentations over quite a long period of time. I've seen some disasters as well, and I've probably been involved in one or two. I'm trying to think of the stories that could back that up right now. But at the minute, we're a management consulting business. We help and advise businesses who want to be more successful or successful, and we've been doing that for 12 years. So it does involve a fair amount of presenting to business owners, business managers, and it's something I really enjoy.
So Tinderbox, tell us a bit more about how it could help our listeners and viewers. What is it exactly you do at Tinderbox? Now, as we said, we had your colleague on here a couple of weeks ago. He gave his perspective from it, but let's hear it directly from the horse's mouth. What does Tinderbox really get in, and how can it change people's lives or businesses as well?
Yeah, it's a good point, David. We work with businesses. We look at their challenges. We look at their challenges specifically. We take time to understand what the issues and challenges or opportunities are. We go in and do a diagnosis. We get to the root cause of the problem and then offer them the support, advice, and help that they need with an action plan to get from where they are to where they want to get to. So it's that sounds very, very simplistic, but it's a process that's worked for us. And we work with, and we've helped over 350 businesses now do better. So my point would be on Tinderbox and what we can do from people listening who are running businesses is that we can certainly help you improve and resolve some of the challenges that you might face today, of which there are probably many thinking about it.
It's a constant constant list of challenges. You don't know what it's going to look like from day to day almost. And I imagine that process, going to an organization, be it large or small, having a conversation about their challenges, and then getting to the point of, oh, okay, this is how Tinderbox can help, probably hinges on that key communication, that potentially a pitch stroke presentation around, this is the value, this is what we can bring, but based on knowing that audience. And how does that work? How does that work for you, David, in your career, when you've had to stand up in front of an audience and deliver a talk, or let's say some solutions for them?
Yeah, I mean, I caught a bit of what you and David and you'd obviously been talking about. I think the fundamental thing in presenting to an audience, or indeed presenting to just a few individuals, is preparation. And I think, without question, the better the preparation, the better the presentation. And within the framework of preparation, I put an understanding of who you're talking to, the type of audience you're talking to. Take time to try and understand the world as they see it. Look at the world from their position, not your position. And then start your presentation, preparing your presentation to appeal to what they will be looking for, their needs. I think that is absolutely crucial. And I've seen too many. I'll give you an example. You wanted some specific examples. We have a team of directors and associate directors, and we've got one of our associate directors speaking to a group of bank relationship managers, about 12 of them. This is about 3 years ago, and we've got a presentation that's pretty well set. It works very, very well. It explains who we are, gives a little bit of background, and so I'll come on to that in a second. And I said to this fellow, I said, have you rehearsed it? Have you practiced it? And he said, it's all sorted, no problem at all. The PowerPoint presentation went up, and believe me, this came over as death by PowerPoint, because every single word on that screen was repeated by our guy. Yeah. And you could see the audience falling away. You could see the body language, you could see the disappointment. And I had to sort of subtly take over on slide 3. And the issue there was, our guy didn't know the content of the presentation. And I watched the clip there of the fellow in front of the screen where his auto cue failed. And clearly he hadn't rehearsed the content of his presentation, because, PowerPoints and all of these tools we use are just aids. The content of the presentation, through your preparation, should be in your head. You must understand and know what you're talking about. And you should be able to do it, as they must have done many, many years ago when we didn't have these presentation tools. You must be able to do it from memory. And if you're capable of doing that, you shouldn't worry about anything going wrong in terms of tools and PowerPoints and machinery, etc., etc. But it becomes embarrassing.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why my top tip is those 3 Ps: the planning, the preparation, practice, for the reasons that you've just explained as well. And I think we're all going to find ourselves at some point, when we're delivering a talk or presentation, making the odd error or mistake. It's just natural. We're not perfect, and we're not trying to be absolutely perfect either. We want to be authentic. We want to be who we are. And you mentioned about slides, using a slide deck, i.e. PowerPoint or Keynote, or maybe some of these online presentation tools now. There's lots of them. But I do believe some of the best talks, and Nick's going to pick up on this because he's written a book all about it in the past, but I do believe some of the best presentations are those that are delivered with no slides, or very minimalistic slides. So maybe an image or 2. Because people are there to listen to you as the speaker. You are the expert. You are the professional. You're the one with the knowledge, the understanding, and your job is there to share, educate, and inform that audience. Not the slides behind you, for the reason that you just said. Because, if you've got someone just turning around and reading off the projection screen, that's not inviting. That's not interesting.
Absolutely.
And it becomes very boring, and people disengage and fall asleep. What do you think, Nick? You've written a book about the invisible PowerPoint presentation.
Totally. If you're going to use visuals, they've got to serve a purpose, but that purpose is different from you. Okay, so the slide's got a job to do if you're going to use it, and you've got a job to do. Different jobs.
Yeah, I think if I can make a point on that, I think both of you spot on there. I think slides, the dreadful bullet point presentations you see on PowerPoint, Yeah, they're better when you've got link phrases that link the bullet points for sure. But that's the job of the presenter. But it's far better if you've just got images on the screen, pictures on the screen, because you're engaging both the heart and the head of the audience. You know, they can see the picture and you're associating the words with that picture. And it's far more powerful. And I guarantee you more will stay in the head of the audience if you do it that way.
Tony agrees with us, by the way. I'm not quite sure which David he's referring to, but we both take the credit that we're both spot on there. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Tony. So just some random tips from yourself, David, as a presenter that's presented probably thousands of times in different environments, to different audiences. What will be your top tips? You've mentioned, obviously, the preparation. What else would you suggest that anyone that's creating a presentation, and it doesn't need to necessarily have slides, and they might be set up to just do an informative talk, what would you be suggesting to them they think about or do, more importantly?
I think there's a few things. I think you have to try and engage the audience and get them with you. This depends on the numbers you're talking to. If you're talking to 70 or 80 people in a room, I mean, I did a presentation last week to about 50 businesses in Canary Wharf, and you know, it's difficult to get them involved individually in that presentation, if you understand what I'm saying. But I asked for a show of hands. I asked a question and I said, how many of you have suffered from X, Y, and Z? I can't remember exactly what it was now. And a number of hands go up, and immediately you know you've got people with you. So you're bringing the audience with you. If you've got a smaller audience, you can ask questions. Is that clear to everybody? And somebody will pop up and say, I'm not really sure. Can you clarify that? So it's important to bring the audience with you. And I think I caught the back end of what you were saying a little bit earlier on. Tell a story. And for example, if I'm talking about, you know, the process of generating ideas and, you know, innovation and things like that, there's no excuse for us in this day and age in preparation not to look for something that you can tell a story about. And for example, in terms of innovation, I'll tell the story of James Dyson, who had 4,000 prototypes before he invented his cyclone vacuum cleaner. And he actually got the idea of the cyclone from going to a sawmill and seeing how the machinery dealt with the sawdust without clogging. So, you know, that's and that brings it all to life. And you know, it's only because he adapted what somebody else was doing, brought it into his market. There's no reason why any business can't do that if they take the time to look for it. So that brought that to life. And there's lots of stories you can find. If you've got personal stories to tell, it's even better. But it really does bring it all to life and adds color and emotion to it, which again brings the audience with you.
Yeah, no, 100%. So top tips there, a couple of them. When are you next delivering a presentation? You know, and what process do you go through? Obviously, if there's a presentation you've dealt with quite a few times, you've delivered it a number of times, then less rehearsal, less practice is needed. I call it my toolbox, by the way.
Yeah.
So I have a toolbox, and it's not a physical toolbox; it's a kind of a virtual toolbox. And in there, I collate all my content, and that will be various different talks and presentations I've delivered over weeks, months, years, even to the degree decades. And if someone says to me, David, really short notice, I could be at an event, David, our speaker's not turned up. Could you stand up and say a few words or do something for 10 minutes? I have this ability to kind of dive into my little virtual toolbox and go, well, firstly, I say, well, what is it you want to cover? You know, or are you happy for me to just pick something that's going to be interesting to the people in the audience today, knowing who's there? And I can dive in, I can pick something out. And quite often I could stand up there and do easily, 15, 20, 30 minutes in some cases, without having any slides, but just knowing my stuff. So my question to you is, do you work similar? When's your next presentation? How much rehearsal do you put into it? Or do you utilize, your history of having stuff there, be able to pick it up and regurgitate it for the audience that you're speaking to?
Yeah, I mean, when you've made a lot of presentations and, when we presented, for example, Tinderbox to lots of business owners, to lots of intermediaries, banks and accountants, there's something you can fall back on. But the one thing I do every time in terms of preparation is, first of all, understand who I'm talking to. Secondly, try and understand where they are in terms of understanding Tinderbox. I mean, are we brand new to them? Have they got some knowledge, and so on and so forth? And I start my presentation from that point, because you don't want to repeat something that somebody's heard before. You want to go in at the point, you know, that's relevant to them. So personalizing it to the audience, again, no matter what toolbox I've got, is very, very important. So it's always thinking about the audience. Who am I talking to? Where are they in a particular journey? And then I'll start from that point and make it relevant to that particular individual or that particular group.
Makes a lot of sense. The audience then think, actually, this talk is for us, rather than this is just a talk about what they do. So
Yeah.
I love the fact, you know, really focusing on what is it like from the audience's perspective. That's great. And then engaging, hooking them in based on their perspective.
Yeah.
Totally
Exactly.
agree. Stories should have enough color, enough emotion to get the audience involved and take them with you. This is excellent work, David. And you know, you've been there and you've done it. You've worked with organizations, you've led them, you've got them to, you know, great heights. So I guess that probably becomes natural to you. You probably, you know, oh, can you make a presentation? No problem. What would you say to someone who's never done one? All right, but their boss is saying, right, it's your turn. We're having a big Zoom call. You've got to update us on what your department's doing, but they've never presented before. What's the first thing you would advise?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that everybody has to go through that. We've all been there. We all know what it's like. But my advice again is I'm sorry to repeat this. It comes down to thorough preparation.
Okay.
Know your subject. Know what you're going to talk about. Rehearse it. Practice it. This may sound silly, but I've done it many times. Practice it out loud to your partner, your wife, your husband, or whatever, and let them give you some feedback, because no damage can be done in the rehearsal room. And I guarantee you, the more you put into that side of things, the better your presentation will come over. And that would be my best bit of advice. In terms of structuring presentations, I think it's always good to have a structure. One I follow pretty much all of the time is, what's the background? Where are we coming into this? What I want to talk about today, how the whole thing works and how it all fits together, how the audience will benefit, and then of course call to action. And there's a few steps there that it's a really, really good format to move things through in a slightly processed way, but in a logical way. And it ends with a close or a call to action, where whoever you've got in the audience is asked to do what you want them to do. Works very, very well. But I think, you know, I've overemphasized this, I know, but poor preparation precedes poor performance.
Yeah,
it's a great line.
100%. Couldn't agree more. That's why it's got to be number one, building blocks, foundations for putting together your best pitch or presentation ever. David, a couple of last questions before we wrap up, and thank you for coming on the show today. Nick and I are compiling a list of top tips, which we're going to be putting together in some sort of format where we're talking around lots of different ideas, but going to be in a paperback format, pretty available on many shelves and through those online ordering systems. And I know you've given us lots of top tips this morning around presenting and pitching, but what would be your ultimate business tip that you'd like to share with our listeners and viewers, and we can put into the book and put your name underneath it? So it could be anything. It doesn't have to be about presenting now. It could be anything that you've learned, knowledge you've gained over your years of experience.
That's a tough one to throw at me.
No pressure.
No pressure. For anybody in business, I think that having a real purpose for the business is absolutely crucial. And if you took the Tinderbox business, our purpose is to make businesses successful or more successful, and that drives everything we do. And I think, you know, any business owner, if you've got a real purpose, I was working with a business the other day, pet shops actually, and their purpose is to make lives better for pets. And I think that's great, because everybody in that organization, whether it be shop assistant, managers or whatever, can hook onto that and say, yeah, this is what we're here for. We're not here to sell dog food or cat food or rabbit food or whatever. We're here to make lives better for pets. And I think it's a great thought. It's a great principle. and I think every business should have a real purpose.
Real
Like
purpose
it.
for why they're doing what
Like
they
it.
do.
Real purpose. Make your business successful or more successful. And Tinderbox have got something new as well to kind of bring that to a much wider audience, haven't they? The
Yeah,
Box
well,
Academy you were going to tell us about.
yeah, well, we in lockdown, clearly our face-to-face meetings were locked out. We didn't have the opportunity to talk to our clients, and face-to-face is really what it's all about with consultancy and our type of consultancy. And gladly now that's coming back. We're seeing a lot of people, and that's fine. But we took the time to think about it. And one of the things that we felt was that expertise and help is needed by a lot of business, and a lot of small businesses who probably can't, being frank, afford consultancy and consultancy rates and so on and so forth. So what we've really done is transferred the Tinderbox ethos, its content, its expertise, and the access to experts all onto an online platform called the Box Academy. And we launched that it took us 18 months to write this. So lockdown did serve a bit of a purpose. It's up and running now. We're working with some partners to get it launched into the marketplace. And it gives the small businesses, any size business, access to lots of good things and expertise that we think they'll find very, very helpful. So that's up and running and moving forward quite nicely.
Brilliant. Which kind of brings me to my final concluding question. If people want to find out more, how can they get in touch? I've got a little bit of help here for you, David. But if there's any other ways that people can get in touch, so tinderboxbd.com is one of your websites that people can go to. Any other great ways for people to reach out to you?
I mean, I'm happy to give my contact details to anybody. So, I mean, I can provide them to you, David and Nick. I think you've got them, but by all means, circulate them. And you know, all we want to do is talk to businesses openly. Again, no obligations at all, and see where it leads, because we want to help businesses be successful and more successful. That's essentially it.
Brilliant. David, it's been great having you on the show here. Learning from lots of your knowledge and experience over the years, learning a little bit more about what Tinderbox does, and of course, getting your top tip to add to our growing list of great like-minded friends of the show who have given a top tip for us to share with the larger business community. So once again, David, thank you very much. David Turner from Tinderbox.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Yeah, bye-bye. Well, Nick, we're coming to the end of the show. I mean, that was great. Having David on here, you know, learning so much stuff that we probably all know, but it just resonates it again, doesn't it? It just brings it back to the surface. Oh, yeah, if I do that, if I think about this, you know, if I use the 3 Ps, if I have, you know, put planning into place and that preparation, it's going to work a lot smoother. I feel more confident. So much to speaking and presenting. But I want to just tap on something we did speak about kind of in our pre-show ramble, which is the real world and the virtual world, and maybe some of the differences and some of the similarities between the two.
Yeah, it's the world of presenting, as everybody knows, has shifted, right? So the days of you and I getting on stage, pretty rare. The opportunities for you and I to get in front of an audience like this, much more common. What I find, however, one of my I guess the biggest issues people have is they take that mindset of this is what it looks like if I'm in a room and I'm presenting my PowerPoint to an audience, and they think that just that will work in a digital environment. But like David said, you know, put yourself in the audience's shoes. If you're sitting at home or in the office on a screen, it's a very different environment than sitting in a conference room. Different presentation, different approach, different engagement styles required for the two different presentation environments.
Got a couple of screenshots here. So this was you, Nick. I don't know if you've seen this. Well, you have seen it because you were there when it happened. But this was you at TEDx, which was at Anglia Ruskin University in Cambridge. This was. You look a little bit younger there as well. I showed a picture earlier. It's amazing what the pandemic has done to us. It's kind of made us age in such a short period, because that wasn't all that long ago, was it?
It seems like it wasn't that long ago, but it probably was. That was me trying out the modern zombie idea in front of an audience. What a lovely opportunity that was.
This was us a year ago, actually, pretty much today. We did basically a breakfast show for XC on behalf of Southend Council and the Best Growth Hub. And this went down like a storm. So each morning it was a 3-day business expo because it was all virtual. You couldn't be meeting up face to face. And they had this business expo, which they turned to an online world. And that was, I think, Nick, one of our first virtual breakfast conferences that we'd run, where we had people kind of tuning in, not just from Southend and Essex and surrounding areas, but we had people joining from around the world, the US and stuff like that, being part of an international business expo.
So there's a positive, right? So if you're going to do a presentation on an online platform, your audience can be far more global than it would be if we're restricted to, you've got to be in this particular location, it's this room. So I can see the benefits. However, I find when I'm viewing a lot of presentations in an online world, just not as much engagement, which is a real shame, because you need to crank up the engagement, because there are far more distractions in your home office than there would be if you're in a conference room. You've got some digital solutions for that, haven't you, mate?
Lots of digital solutions out there. For me, if you're presenting, look, there's so many similarities between real world and being behind a screen. There's lots of things, but there's also some big differences you need to be aware of. Firstly, good audio. Get yourself a decent microphone. If people can't hear you, they're going to disengage really quickly. But that's no difference to being in the real world. If people can't hear you from the back of the room, they're going to turn off as well. So similar. Get yourself a good quality camera that is stable as well. It's not bouncing around and people can see you. It's really important. Get rid of those ambient background noises. Make sure if you're going on a call, I always say, certainly if you're going to do a presentation, but even a Zoom call or meeting, tell the people in your house or your office, I'm going on a call, keep the voice down. Don't come barging through the door. Put a live on air sticker on the door if that's what you have to do to stop people. Last thing you want is your wife or your husband or your mum or your dad, depending on if you're living at home, walking past in their underpants. And it happens. We know it happens. We laugh about it, but we've seen it happen. So you need to consider, some of these things. Declutter the background. I mean, yes, virtual backgrounds are absolutely awesome, but if you don't have a virtual background, just make sure that you don't have your ironing board out, your mattress, or whatever it's going to be. Just declutter that background. Really, really important. Other little things for me, top tips, keep the camera engaged as much as possible. I'm not saying you stare down the camera all the time, but you don't want to be doing this. People don't like the top of your head, but it's the same in a live audience, isn't it? Same in the room. Look at your audience. Share the love. Eye contact is important. Differences on a camera, eye contact is as much down the middle of the camera as possible. In the room, it's kind of share the love around, look at everybody, engage with everybody. It keeps people with you. So, there's some of the things that I would be suggesting. And I'll be honest, less is more. Less slides online, the better. Because I think if you put slides up, people disengage. And tell people to switch their cameras on as well. Horrible. Horrible, isn't it? Talking to nobody. I know we are here. It's just you and I we can see. And we've got, people joining us and watching, and people are watching us a bit different. This is a kind of more of a show than it is a presentation or a talk. But if you are delivering a presentation or a talk, I really do hope that people watching and listening do switch on their camera so you can at least see them nodding or shaking their head or rolling their eyes, whatever that might be. And if they haven't, ask them, tell them to. And show of hands, lots of questions, use the chat box, get them to put feedback in, rhetorical questions to keep their ears open. There's lots of techniques that you can do. And all these are going to definitely help.
Yeah, I think engagement is a real struggle in an online platform. Must work much harder, ladies and gents, to keep that engagement up, because your audience are distracted, just like everybody else in our digital world. So, mate, we've come to the end of the show. We did promise.
Not quite yet.
Really?
We do have a few things to share.
Yeah, we did promise a couple of things. What happens when all your planning and preparation, something new happens, and some other stuff?
Well, should we have a look? This is Nick live in action. Tell us a little bit about it, Nick.
right? What you've missed is I played catch with the entire audience to prove a point about communication. All right, it's quite literally ballsy because we had squidgy stress balls flying absolutely everywhere. Beautiful chaos. Okay, so the game of catch has just come to an end.
Let's see what happens.
Yes! Give yourself a massive round of applause. Yeah, I should have seen this coming, shouldn't I? So that was and is the frenzy of communication chaos that surrounds us.
What makes me giggle, mate? They were attacking me with these missiles. I'm trying to do my first ever TEDx talk. Amazing.
Fantastic. I've got a similar video. It's just a 15-second snippet. When I engage a whole audience, get them up, taking selfies. Let's see what happened here.
You in it and everybody else. And I'm going to count you down and everyone's going to take the picture at the same time. Are we ready? Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I didn't quite set a world record. We were trying. We did pretty well, and we did get great feedback from that. But again, it's all about engagement. You're throwing your balls around. That doesn't sound quite right, but you're throwing the balls into the audience, and people are throwing their balls back at you. And I'm getting people up on their feet because for me, that engagement is crucial because so many people will just roll slides and talk, and that's not going to keep your audience. And it's not memorable. I can tell you now. I've got one of your squidgy balls, Nick. Here somewhere. I'd have to find it. I know I've got it. My daughter comes in my office and plays with it from that. And I remember that talk like it was yesterday, but in fact, it was back in 2016, something around there.
Long time ago.
And it was great. It really was. Just like, I'm getting people up out of their seats, taking selfies. It becomes memorable. So what can anyone do? And it's different for all of us. What can you do to make your talk or presentation memorable? Think about that, because I would leave that probably as something, there as our final top tip about speaking and presenting. What can you do to make your talk or presentation memorable? A couple of things before we wave goodbye. We've got a special show on Monday. Nick is hosting a special show. Nick, do you want to just give us the pun here, a flavour of what this is about?
Absolutely. Streamed live on Monday evening around the globe. We're going to have a discussion, a very important discussion about the environment, about what businesses can do, with the backdrop that all of my guests will be consuming mega hot wings, meaty or vegetarian. So I want to have the really exciting and possibly tough conversations with my lovely audience, David included, while they consume mega hot wings.
Yeah, I have no idea how I got myself involved in this and how it's happening. But for some of you will know that we are involved with another streaming platform where Nick and I, amongst many others, are looking to create small change and make us more environmentally friendly, reduce our carbon footprint, and just become greener and look after our planet. But we're doing it with small businesses and it's increments, but we're making it fun and interactive. And this is one of many live feeds that we're going to be putting out there. And this one is all kicking off with Nick hosting, sitting back and laughing at us while we're eating hot wings. And we're starting from something very mild and cool and going to something up actually is pepper spray heat. Why? I have no idea. And by the way, when we're eating these chicken wings, we've got to answer Nick's questions and have a conversation and try to communicate to our audience the right answer. It's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be certainly interactive. God knows what's going to happen. Tune in. You'll better watch it on all the Chatbox channels. We are streaming to other platforms as well through StreamAid Live. Love you to join us, even if you just come in and watch me in agony. We will show some of the snippets and clips on a future Chatbox show if I'm around to share them with you. So look out for that Monday evening from 6:30 p.m. That's British Summertime UK time. That's one last thing I want to end on, though, is I want to thank Dominic Tyler for this. Watching from his home, us on the big screen there. It's a huge screen, Dom, and thank you very much for sending in the clip. That was a couple of weeks ago when we were doing the breakfast show. So that was, thank you. We're using that little picture, and people are engaging with that.
Brilliant. Next week, we'll be talking more about another challenge that you're doing, David, the zipline challenge.
There you go. How did I get involved in this one, Nick? It's because someone backed out of it because they got more important things to do.
No,
I'm
not in the geographical area. I love a challenge. Happy to accept it and then pass it on to my good friend, Mr. David Bell. Brilliant. So let's
just
talk
a
more
quick
about
one
that
here.
next week.
The zip wire challenge. I'm going down to Hang Loose in Blue Water, and it's the longest zip line in the UK. And I'm going to be going across the quarry at Blue Water, raising money for charity in Sue's name. David Taylor, a friend of the show, has been on here talking about how he tragically lost his daughter and their children got left behind at a very young age, and how now he's raising money for in Sue's name, which is the charity, all helping brain tumor research. If you want to sponsor me, I'm going to put it up on the screen here. Please feel free to make a small donation of any size. I can tell you now, every single penny goes direct to the charity. There's no admin cost. All the people involved in the charity, they're doing it voluntary. There's no salaries, no expenses. David actually expenses the whole charity himself from his own pocket. All the money raised goes directly to the charity itself, and then goes to good causes, to combating or finding ways of making people's lives more comfortable, and obviously the research that goes behind that. So watch out for that. I'm going to be filming it live on set, and then we'll show you some of the outtakes and snippets from that. That's not until June time, so I've got a few weeks to plan and prepare and practice for that. I'll be zipping down my stairs or something along those lines.
Great work, mate. What a show. What a show. We've crammed a lot in, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, as always. Thank you for your company. Thank you, audience. It's been lovely to have you along. Thank you for your comments, as always. Hope you enjoyed the content. Hope you take something away, and your next presentation, be it in the room or online, is slightly more engaging, more enjoyable than it would have been before.
Yeah. See you next week, Thursday morning from 8 o'clock. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.